Hey guys, we're looking at part 12 of an examination of Scrivener's 190 list. And so this is part 12. So we're looking at, sorry, I've got a bit of too much information there. So we're looking at Mark chapter 1 verse 21 in the list. So I'll just go to the top of this page. If you go to textusreceptus.com and there's a hyphen between Textus and Receptus, or if you just simply type in tr.org.au, if you go to that page, you can navigate through and find this one. And so it's on the bottom of actually every page. If you go to my main page here, if you go down the bottom of the page, there's a whole bunch of links, but there's some internal links, and you can see here variations of Scrivener, and so that's the page that I'm looking at. And so we're looking at Mark 121, and so I know it says 13 here, but what we've realized is 1 and 2 are actually exactly the same issue, and the next one as well is actually Beelzebub or Beelzebul, and so it's we've already dealt with that in Matthew. So some of these double up, and so you'll find that where there's 191 issues or 190 issues, many of these are doubled up as well. So we're going to find that there's probably about 20 of these issues that aren't even worth talking about again and again. So so actually the next video I'm going to do is just going to explain how this is the Beelzebub issue, just because we don't want to have gaps in these videos. Someone might go through this list and realize that I've left out a place where they got Beelzebub, and they're like, well, why didn't you do a video on that? So I'll just do a quick little video on it, just to point people back to my other video and just have a link there. So let's get into Mark 1:21. So what's the issue here? So basically it's just the article is dropped out, and so we can see here in Scrivener he has te synagogen, and here we have in Beza he just has synagogen, and so the issue is just the definite article. And what we see in every other edition, besides the 4 Greek editions of Theodore Beza, it has a definite article. I haven't checked the Complutensian and a few others, but what we see with Scrivener's research is he seems to think that as well. But it doesn't really matter if these early ones had it or not, as we're going to see. So sometimes I can go through and check absolutely every single one of these, but it doesn't really matter that much. Sometimes it does matter. Sometimes there's only one edition of Beza that has a certain issue, and so we have to find out where there are allies with that, or where he got that reading from. But with this one, I'm pretty sure it's just everyone has a definite article except for Beza. Eventually, as I go through these over the years, I'll put these in and fill these up, but for what we want to do today, this suffices. So the first thing we want to look at is, let's just look at what Scrivener wrote. So this is his 1881 Textus Receptus. So like I've said, when you see the little asterisks here, that means that there's an issue that points us to go to the back of the book. The back of his book has Mark 1:21 here, te synagogen, and it has omits te, and then it has Beza's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th editions. So that omits that. So that would line up with what we have here without the definite article. Okay, so Scrivener has it. Stephanus has it in his 1550, Erasmus in his 1519, and so we see it is there before. So yes, I would be in agreement with that. So I'll just reopen this so we can clearly see it has Eis te Synagogen, and so the asterisk is above the definite article there. Now that I've just opened this page as well, so it's basically exactly the same thing, but it's just so just showing you how this matches up with my website. Now on my website, obviously I've got a whole bunch of pictures and things like that, but sometimes people mightn't trust that, or it's like, where did you get that from? Okay, you can go to Hathy Trust. You can get the exact document that Scrivener made, that he designed, and you can go through that yourself. And so here we have exactly the same thing with the asterisks there. That's just to show you exactly where I got it from. And the next picture is at the back of that same book. We have this written. So it's Mark 1:21, te Synagogen omits te B's second, third, fourth, and fifth. So it has that, which matches up with what I've got written here, or what Scrivener's got written here at the end of that same book. He has his 190 list that he mentions in his preface, and they're all lined up in the back here. So most of you guys who have followed through with this already know that, but sometimes you sort of get the feeling that there's going to be new people who jump in the middle and they're not going to know this, and so you feel like you've got to explain yourself time and time again. But sometimes it's good to just hear this over and over again, because I've found in explaining things constantly, after a while you do tend to have, like a little parable that goes with it, or even just the revelation that, because a lot of people go, whoa, that's really strange having the King James as the final authority. Well, it didn't seem strange to Scrivener. He created this whole document thinking that the King James was a final authority and the underlying Greek text was a final authority. And so it's quite interesting that Westcott and Hort, Ellicott and his committee, including Scrivener, they thought the same as I'm thinking. So when people say, oh, that's a really strange position, and King James only and all this stuff, it's like, well, actually, I go with the Greek text underlying the King James as well. And so does the Dean Berg Society, so do most people. And so a lot of people think this is it, the Textus Scrivener, which is, published by the Trinitarian Bible Society now, without all the end notes and the lengthy preface, and without all the notes for the Westcott Nord text. But so I just thought I'd just throw that one in. So what are we looking at here? Let's look at our website again. So we've gone through those two. So what's the next one? Let's look at the text of Theodore Beza. So here we have Eis Synagogen. You can see that there, Eis Synagogen. So he drops the te. So the te is there. So let's have a quick look at that again. Here's that te with the asterisk there. So we can see the Eis, the Synagogen, but he's dropping the te there. So this can be seen in the Herrera text here. Mark 21, we have Eis Synagogen here. And so you can see in his Latin, he has in synagogum, and in the Vulgate it has the same, in synagogum. And so we see just down here in verse 23, we see like synagogue written there as well. So they're talking about the synagogues. But yeah, so we see that there is an omission, Eis Synagogen here. So the te is missing. So that is the issue. So that's why Scrivener put it in there. He inserted that in there, put the asterisks, and so he's written about it at the back. And so let's have a look at what else we have. So then we have how that comes through with the King James translation. And we have, they went into Capernaum, and straight away on the Sabbath day he entered into the synagogue and taught. Okay, so this is where people go, well, or say Scrivener in 1881, in compiling the Greek text, he's gone, hang on, it says he entered into the synagogue, but when we look at Theodore Beza's text, it doesn't have the definite article there. It says he entered into Eis Synagogen, and so it doesn't say Eis Te Synagogen, into the synagogue. So what do we do with that? And so that's why he's inserted that there, that the definite article. So what do we do with this? Well, it's quite clear. Well, actually, I'll just go through this information here before I start summarizing what I've said here. So we can see, Scrivener's following the editions of Stephanus. So Beza is the only one who really has his 4 Greek editions. His first edition was a Latin edition, so that's why they say the 5 editions of Theodore Beza. But if we look at the English version, so Wycliffe has a synagogue, okay, but that's based on the Latin text. So I was looking into this yesterday. The synagogue is Tyndale's reading, ye synagogue, which is ye sometimes used to be the same as the. I'm not even sure how you would pronounce that, but I'm pretty sure it's just the synagogue. Geneva, the synagogue, that's the 1557 Geneva. In the 1560, the synagogue. In the bishops, the 1568, the synagogue. And so we can see on my website here, if you jump on there, you can see, I'll just zoom down a little bit. Okay, so we've got Erasmus's 1519 that I looked up. So it has Eis Te Synagogen here, Eis Te Synagogen. And so that's why I've put it here. That's the only one I've looked up of Erasmus's so far, Eis Te Synagogen, and I'll put that information on my website. But you can clearly see these other ones, the 1550 Eis Te Synagogen. Theodore Beza's has Eis Synagogen, so it drops the Te. So I'll just zoom down here. So yeah, we can see the Tyndale. He had into the synagogue and taught. Okay, so that's his 1526. So you can clearly see that. That's his edition there. You can see the 1557 into the synagogue and taught. Okay, so the synagogue. And then we were looking already at the King James Version. It has the synagogue. Okay. And so what we're seeing is, Scrivener's, he's looked at all this, he's looked at these editions and thought, well, I think, and so this is where I guess I would say that, someone like Theodore Beza, on a level of 1 to 10 with his expertise in Greek, I would put him at a level 10. I would put Erasmus at a level 10. He was one of the best Greek linguists ever. So was Beza, and he was also brilliant at Latin. So was Erasmus. And so, but when I look at someone like Scrivener, I would put him at about a 4. And people can be surprised at that, but I've done a lot of homework into Scrivener, and I just find that at times he just makes funny, strange blunders, and you're just left there going, it's the sort of mistake that someone would make if they weren't fluent in the language, or they weren't constantly reading the Greek New Testament like it was their own language. Where, say, if you look at Beza, for like 50 years, he was making editions, and he was reading through those issues, and he was making Latin editions. He was helpful with the Geneva Bible, and he was constantly involved with this, where I feel that Scrivener, academically, he could understand these issues, but I don't think he had the bullets to really stand beside someone like Theodore Beza. So let's look at why I think that. So we've gone through those ones. Okay, so is Scrivener correct in changing the text of Beza from Te Synagoge, Te Synagogen to Synagogen, and omitting the Te? So what's interesting, in Mark 3:1, in the Greek text of Westcott and Hort, I'll just make this a little bit bigger. So I've already got it at 150. Okay, so now I've totally lost my spot. Here we go. So in Mark 3:1, in the Greek text of Westcott and Hort, it also does not have the article Te. But it reads like Mark 1:21 with Eis Synagogen, which is the reading of Theodore Beza. But it still translates as the synagogue. If Scrivener was to back translate, in brackets there, from English into the Greek of Westcott and Hort, he would have also put the definite article there. So we see here another unnecessary change to the text. And so, and that bottom bit is basically just what Scrivener has written here, just so you know what that is. So it's not that technical. It just has that's the reading of Scrivener, and there's an omission of that in those editions of Beza. And so, okay, so let's look at Mark 3:1. So let's firstly look at the Textus Receptus. So we're going to Mark chapter. So this is only like 2 chapters down the road. And the more that I searched for this, I found these type of examples everywhere. And this is one of the things, like with Beelzebub and Beelzebul, it's like, Scrivener's like, there has to be change, But then the other editions where Beelzebul appears, he doesn't change them. And so it just makes you wonder why. It's like, why would you change it in one spot and not in all the other spots? And then claim it's an import from the Latin. Yeah, it might be an import from Latin language and the development of the English language. Obviously we have Arabic words, and we have Chinese words. We say things like ninjas from Japanese and things like that. So we import a lot of words from other languages, and we do with them whatever we want to do. But then he's sort of like, it comes from the Latin Vulgate, just because it is a Latin word, and it's in the Vulgate, so it must come from the Latin Vulgate. And I find this either disingenuous or just silly. It's unlearned. It's and why would you change it once when it appears? I think it's like 5 times. And so we're going to look at that in our next video. But so here we have Eis Te Synagogen. And so we have the exact same words here that Scrivener has. And I might just quickly just show you. So this will be Mark 3:1 in the KJV. We'll have a look at this is probably one of the best sites to go to for the KJV, because you can look up the actual 1611. Okay, but maybe that's for another time, because I can't find the link. Anyway, so, and he entered again into, notice Eis into Tain, the synagogue or synagogue or synagogen, into the synagogue. And so that's what we have. So it's exactly the same reading, but we see this in Scrivener is made to match. So this matches exactly in Mark 1:21 in the Greek. But what's interesting, if you go to the Westcott and Hort text, so let's just see, we can see here the 1598, if you go to Bible Hub, they've correctly got Eis Synagogen, so into synagogue. So they haven't got, what would be considered the. And the thing is, it's an understanding of anarthrous and the anarthrous nouns, and so some nouns, they don't need the definite article in front of them. To the context in English, when it's saying, he read book, if it doesn't have the book, in English we have to have the definite article, and just to make sense, so we put it in there, and it doesn't have to be in italics either. And so for a translation, that is perfectly fine. That's normal. And we see here that Tischendorf, actually it's not in this one, but it's in another text. I'm sort of rabbit trailing here, so I'll pull myself back. But so when we look at Mark 3:1, so we see here Westcott and Hort has Eis Synagogen. So notice it doesn't have the definite article. So that's a bit like what Theodor Beza has here with his Eis Synagogen. And so he doesn't have the definite article. Okay, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here, getting a little bit excited. So into synagogue. And so what do we have with Scrivener? As we looked at, he has Eis te Synagogen, so does Beza, Eis te Synagogen. So what's the go here? How would this, if we go to the Westcott and Hort text, how would this pan out? Okay, so let's look at Mark chapter 3, verse 1 in the Revised Version. And it has the synagogue. And he entered into the synagogue. Notice there's no italic there. It's translated the synagogue. Westcott and Hort had no problem in translating that Greek Eis Synagogen into the synagogue, but without the definite article there. So why would Scrivener, being their contemporary, why would he not make a fuss about that when he's actually made a fuss about it here? And he's basically saying you sort of have to have that in there to match the 1611, where Westcott and Hort, the Westcott and Hort team didn't think you needed that in there to get, Eis into tain the synagogen, to have, you don't need the te to get the. It's anarthrous. You don't need the definite article there, so it just says into synagogue. And for the Greek translation, that's perfectly fine, because Westcott and Hort do it here over in Mark 3:1, just 2 chapters later. And so this is where I find that Scrivener's scholarship falls down, because he, I'm actually looking at the Nestle there. I'll just show you that it's in Westcott and Hort, the 1881 there. And so that's a problem. Like for me, that just shows that that Scrivener made this change unnecessarily, and that's the conclusion of almost every one of these readings in Scrivener's 190 list, is that it's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary change. Things are they're pointed out, but most of the time they're not translatable, or it just doesn't make any sense for him to do it there but not elsewhere. Why in Mark 3:1, let's just have a quick look at his text at Mark 3:1. I think I've got it here. Yeah, here we are. Mark chapter 3. He has in his text Eis tain synagogen. So that's in the Textus Receptus. That's fine. But we saw in the Westcott and Hort text, it's just Eis Synagogen. If we go down to the same Beza text we're just looking at, Eis te Synagogen. So those equal each other, whether you have Eis te, and look, here we have variants. We have this in brackets here. So this is an issue that's known to the Westcott and Hort, the NA 27th and 28th guys. And so they're putting the bracket there, do you need that or not? But at the end of the day, like here we are, Tischendorf, that's what I was looking for before. He doesn't have the definite article. but so these things translate as the same. So I can't understand, if they translate as the same, why has Scrivener made a deal about it? Why has he looked at the King James text and gone, okay, well, it says he entered into the synagogue. Why do we have to have why do we have to have this Greek word te underlying that, when elsewhere his contemporaries didn't have that structure, and there's no note in his edition, because his edition is also going through the issues of Westcott and Hort. We don't see any little dots here anywhere. We have Ice Te Synagogue without any little marginal note down here. And so there's, and it's quite interesting that that's actually probably an error, where he's got the Textus Receptus saying that, and he's supposed to show where the Westcott and Hort text is changed, but it doesn't have it written down here. So that's the thing, is like, I'm not even looking at that issue. That's a whole complete side issue, because that's going through the Westcott and Hort Greek, and it's like, to me, it's like looking at the Jehovah's Witness Bible. It's not really something I can be bothered looking into. I know eventually we will have to look at all that, but it just shows you that he's not thorough. He's missed that bit. I've just found it, and that's the thing. That's what amazes me is, I'll be going through Jan Kranz's stuff and just find errors here and there, and I'll point them out, and these guys lose their mind over it and say that I'm uncharitable, because I'm just like, well, who are these people? Jennifer Nuss is probably not saved, and Tommy Wassman doesn't believe in a hell, so he's a heretic, and I'm just like the kid that's like, hey, the king's got no clothes, and Mark Ward's like, this guy's uncharitable, and it's really strange to watch this sort of woke movement spreading into bibliology. But I don't want to go on a huge rant about that. I think you can clearly see that by just going to my website. If you go through this information, you'll see that there's really no need for Scrivener to add this to the text of Theodore Beza, or to assume that the King James translators, adopted that reading in their underlying Greek text. That they didn't, and I think we can clearly see that Westcott and Hort, they in their text have the definite article, but at times they don't, and it translates the synagogue. So what's the big deal, Scrivener? Did a good job. Probably compiled the thing that's closest to the underlying Greek text of the King James, but still no ribbon for you. And that's what I'm finding, and that's most of my research has pointed to there's about 10% of his 190 issues that are even worth looking at, and that are true. We will find them, the ones that are true, and I'll show you those, and places where the text needed amending to match the underlying Greek text of the King James. But most of this other stuff is just froth and bubble, and it's quite funny when I talk to people about this issue. Almost there's hardly anyone out there who knows about this stuff, and I really felt years ago that this is one of the areas where there needs to be a bit more scholarship on this, and people need to go through this stuff, because they're making these huge claims that Scrivener found this, and that's what I find too, is Scrivener will write a whole bunch of stuff on marginal notes. People like Mark Ward, Timothy Berg, they'll jump into that realm, and then they'll just claim with authority, well, this is what Scrivener has, and instead of just going, okay, let's look at Scrivener, yes, but let's just leave him out of the picture for a moment and just look at the original source documentation, and you find, like I've shown in here, that there are errors, that he's read Beza wrong, and he's added it, and he's changed his Greek text. And so I know this can be upsetting to also people in the confessional bibliology camp who and say people like Stephen Anderson, De Soto, and other guys who usually we've got this cohesive, Textus Receptus idea and all that, but I've pointed out for years that this does have errors, and it doesn't exactly match up with the King James. Where I've had people say, "Oh no, it does," and it's like, well, I mean, just to definitively hit the pulpit and say it does, it's like, well, have you done all this homework? Then you can say it does or doesn't. You know what I mean? So hopefully, by me going through these issues, it will raise the bar instead of just us. Or us, I guess I'm including, TR people, because I do this for TR people so that they can be more educated and so that they can not get caught out by the strange and weird arguments of people like Mark Ward, who will just say, Scrivener wasn't a TR fan. And it's like, I'm just there going, yeah, and, and I'm like, did you get that idea from me? Did you grab that from my website? Or... because it's like, I've been saying this for years and years and years, and he just pulls it out like it's a new... Mark Ward's just the king of stating the obvious. It's like, there's archaic words in a 400-year-old Bible. It's like, okay, and, it's like a huge shock to the King James community. It's like... Anyway, I shouldn't be so uncharitable. I should go and say my penance and ring someone up and just pat a puppy and, not be such an uncharitable person. So I'm going to do another video in a minute, but that's going to be on the Beelzebub one. So I'm going to bail from here. I'll just quickly check and see if there's any live feedback. Sometimes we do get people jumping in on this. Here we are, live stream. Okay, so we've got Doki Doki Bible Club. He says, "Hi Nick. Did you enjoy the Wilkini debate? Very helpful, thank you, Nick. A dog, awesome." Patting a puppy, yeah. And so I'm going to go and pat a puppy. Even though I don't have a puppy myself, I'm going to find one, and I'm going to be nice to that puppy just to prove to people that I'm not, crazy, blue-blooded alien CIA plant Ruckmanite. That's what Ruckman believed. He believed in blue-blooded aliens and all sorts of weird things. But so I did like the Wilkini debate. I've been pretty vocal that I agree with Will on almost everything, probably except for I'm not a Calvinist, and so I don't agree with his Calvinism. But I also don't agree with his numerology sort of stuff. Where it's like, if you add up these words, they actually equal the same as these other words, and the middle word of the Bible turns out to be this word. And to me, I just don't go there. I find the King James it's a great translation, and I believe it's without error and it's perfect. But when we're sort of going into the Bible codey type of thing, I just don't like it. He's got some really good stuff. Will was sort of reaching out to me about the Revelation 16:5 stuff before he jumped on, and he said it was a conjectural emendation, which is probably... It's been debunked about 3 or 4 years ago now. Or when I wrote my book, I proved that it wasn't a conjectural emendation, according to the standards of Bart Ehrman and Bruce Metzger. But then, with the addition of the information in my book, I proved that it was a nomina sacra. So that proves that it's not a conjectural emendation. But then on top of that, you'll find that Jeff Riddle, incorrectly translating the Latin, and Larry Brigden from the Trinitarian Bible Society, and also Jan Kranz admitted this as well, but he said Beza just made a mistake and slipped on a banana peel sort of thing. They've admitted that Theodore Beza said that he had an ancient manuscript with this reading in it, and he has that in his annotations, and so that proves that it's not a conjectural emendation. A conjectural emendation is something that's completely out of thin air. Some people have a different level of what a conjecture is. Some people say that or specifically conjectural emendation. A conjecture is, or an emendation is a change. A conjecture is you are getting that change from nowhere, and so the conjectural emendation of Revelation 16:5. It's not a conjecture. I can prove, and I've lined up a debate with another guy called Michael Borowski, and so we were talking about it last night. I said, I'll debate you on Revelation 16:5. He said, okay, I'll do it. And so, but basically, I was sort of trying to get Will up to speed with the fact that it's not a conjecture, that there is manuscript evidence for it, that Beza said he had an ancient manuscript. We don't know what that manuscript was, but also with understanding that it's a type of nomina sacra where they put holy on the end of a huge noun phrase, the one which was and is and shall be. That's a huge noun phrase that equals Jehovah. In the temple they used to say Jehovah, and they would say which art and wast and shall be. So it's exactly the same as what they were, as what's written in the King James, or I guess they were speaking Hebrew, but it equals Jehovah. And so understanding that, you can understand why they put holy on it, because it was the most holy and sacred name of God probably in the whole entire New Testament. So I was trying to explain that to Will, but it's a hard concept if you're in a rush, and it's taken me years to get my head around all that and to be able to explain it properly. So I enjoyed what Will said. There's a few things that I would have said differently, but all in all, he did a very good job. And so Aaron V said, just tuning in, volume for me is really low for some reason. Okay, your mic volume is a little low. Could you possibly turn it up some? Hi, Aaron. I'll just try that. I think what I really should do is start wearing headphones. I was doing this in the debate, and I'll just plug this in. If you guys can just tell me if it's better, that'll be a really good help. So how's that? Is that much better? I think it is. I can hear myself quite loudly through this. And so, sounds great. Thank you. Okay, excellent. So yeah, I think I'll start reading. Speaking with these on. So this, even though this is a live stream, I'm not going to let it carry on like I do with my others, because this is part of a short and sharp video series, basically explaining the issues of Scrivener. And so I'm gonna turn this off, and I'm going to restart another video, which will be part 13, and probably in about 5 minutes, and then and so these are the videos that I'm going to do today. So, but tomorrow morning I'll be doing a 4-hour long video marathon, and so we'll be talking about all sorts of things, the debates that have come up, and so yeah. Well, thanks for letting me know about the audio, because it's just good to know those things. I do have a really good set of headphones there, but they're Bluetooth, and sometimes it can be a little bit funny if the battery goes flat. You just got to be on top of with all these things, and so anyway, I've got a lot of things open here, and so I'm just gonna bail. But thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll see you again soon. If not in the next video, I'll definitely be around this time tomorrow. Probably about 2 hours earlier, I'll be doing another video marathon. So feel free to join in. Okay, cheers, guys. Thanks for that.